Okay, welcome everyone to another random walk down Mill Street. Tonight is December 21st, the fourth night of Hanukkah. So Hanukkah Sameach, Hanukkah Allegre, as we say here. I hope you're having an enjoyable holiday. Many of you are on vacation, and I know that I'm also competing with the President of Ukraine. So thank you for joining in here to this session. The topic is culinary. We're talking about some of the foods of Hanukkah. In particular, we're going to learn a little bit about Latkes, a little bit about sufganiyot, and a little bit about waffles. And this is a light topic. I don't think it's going to take us particularly long to go through the sources that I have assembled for you today. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen, and here we go. So I do have to thank our session sponsor. Dr. Braverman. I don't know if he's joined us or not, but Dr. Braverman comes to synagogue frequently and often speaks to me about topics of American Jewish history, in particular military history. And so I want to thank him for sponsoring this session in honor of Commander Chaim Braverman, who I believe is a relative, and in memory of Major General Maurice Rose, who was one of the highest ranking Jews during World War II, and who was a casualty at the end of the war. I think he was a tank commander who had great success in Sicily and later on in the European theater. Anyway, thank you, Dr. Braverman, for sponsoring this session. Topic is donuts, latkes, and waffles, some culinary traditions of Hanukkah. So the first thing I want to talk to you about has nothing to do with Spanish Portuguese. It's just ubiquitous in America and in almost everywhere that they celebrate Hanukkah. You will see people eating latkes or places serving latkes. What is latkes? It's everyone knows what a latke is. It's a potato pancake. It's a hash brown, and you serve it either with sour cream or applesauce. Some people go a little further and get a little more exotic, but that's the way people eat it. And some of them are more, fine. So you have potato flour as opposed to just shredded potato. But I think we all know what latkes are. But what is the word latke? What does the word latke come from? And so that's what I wanted to share with you today. I'm not going to what's the right word? I'm not going to reinvent anything that I don't have any firsthand sources to share with you, but I thought the story is interesting on a couple different levels. So it's written up in different places. Gil Marx talks about it. There's articles about it. But this one came from the Forward in 2001, and it has a lot of the different elements that all come together in one article. So we're just going to read this article, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. So according to the Oxford English Dictionary, the first published reference to latkes in the United States is in 1927, and it refers to luscious potato latkes, pancakes made of grated potatoes, from an article in the American Mercury. But latke is obviously a Yiddish word. Yiddish words took a while to get into English, but they were known in the 19th century, obviously in literature, all over the place. And the etymology for the word latke in Yiddish is not from the German. A lot of Yiddish is German, but latke is from a Slavic root. And in particular, it's been traced to the Russian word oladka. Latka, oladka. Okay. Which is a diminutive of the word oladya, which is defined as a flat cake of unleavened wheat dough. Okay. The etymological sources agree that this Russian word has descended itself from Middle Greek eladion, which means an oil cake or a little oily thing, eladion, which is itself derived from the Greek word for olive oil, elion or eleon. We have that word, and we have it all over in English. We have that root for olive oil is the same root. But as he notes here, The distance from the Yiddish Latke to the Greek Ilion is about as vast as the diaspora itself. But it's interesting because at first, the first latkes were from Italy, and they were little cakes made with curd cheese that were fried in olive oil or butter. And that's to get its connection to Hanukkah, where it has connected to the story of Judith and Holofernes. In the Middle Ages, this has made a connection between this food and eating dairy, even though that story is only tenuously connected to Hanukkah, which we don't have to get into today, but that's how it gets connected to Hanukkah. And latkes were these fried cheese balls, so to speak. But as Jews moved from Italy into Europe, and in particular to Eastern Europe, oil was more expensive than the main frying agent, which was schmaltz. Schmaltz was meaty, and you couldn't fry cheese in schmaltz. And so they began to experiment and tried all sorts of other things, including buckwheat flour, which is how the Russian term becomes the Russian meaning of oladya was an unleavened wheat dough cake, probably made of buckwheat flour. And that's the story of the word latke. But wait a second, latke, we know today, is not buckwheat, or it's not cheese, it's potatoes. Potatoes are a New World vegetable. They come from America and were only brought to Europe in the 17th century, the 16th century. And so he says potatoes were unknown in Europe until the late 16th century when they were shipped back from the New World. Further complicating matters, potatoes were rumored to be a carrier of typhoid and leprosy, and were not widely planted in Europe until disastrous harvests of staple grains left farmers no alternatives. This happened in different stages throughout the continent, beginning in Germany in 1720 and culminating in Russia by the 1840s. And it's only at this time, in the middle of the 19th century, that we start to see references to latkes being made from potatoes. So I like this story because you think you know what a latke is. It's a potato pancake. No, it only became a potato pancake in the 19th century when they started substituting potatoes for the other subjects, other things that they used. And the interesting thing is that at some point, they were using schmaltz, which I find interesting because it totally removes what we think of as the history of latkes having to do with olive oil and in the origin of its name, when it's totally devoid of that origin in the 19th century in Eastern Europe, when they're frying it in schmaltz. There's no olive oil at all, except in this remnant of the name latke, coming from the Greek for olive oil fried thing, which we don't even remember. So anyway, that's the first stop on this tour of the culinary customs of Hanukkah. Latke, Yiddish, but coming from the Greek. Okay. And you thought it was potatoes, but really, no. And now we go on to the other thing that we always see on Hanukkah, which is sufganiyot. Sufganiyot are donuts. It's a kind of funny word, sufganiyot, but we don't have to talk about that too much today. But it's one of these Hebrew words that was reinvented from the Talmudic. Let's see what this chat is. Okay. So we're going to talk about a kind of interesting little story. I don't have a good answer at the end of it, but a little incident about a small piece of a very ancient text, maybe, which seems to refer to the culinary customs of Hanukkah. And this piece, which is alleged to have been written by the father of Maimonides, Maimon bar Yosef, so it would have been in the 12th century, the father of Maimonides, who was a Dayan in Spain. And it was published for the first time, or at least widely published and widely known, only in the 1950s. It was published by Yaakov Moshe Toledano, who's an interesting character. He was born in Israel. He became a Dayan in North Africa, in Egypt, and Algeria, and then became the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv. And then he was asked to serve as the minister of religious affairs in the Knesset, even though he was not a member of the Knesset. He was a rabbi, but he was asked to become the minister of religious affairs, which he was serving as towards the very end of his life. In the 1950s, he publishes a book. Aside from all his rabbinic activity, or maybe as a corollary to it, he was a collector of manuscripts and a bibliophile, and he searched out wherever he was for rare editions, and he published some of his findings in a book called Saridu Palit, which I don't know the exact year, but I'm going to guess came out around 1955 or so. And here we have we're going to read a little section from it, from the father of the Rambam, but he tells you a little of the history of the part that he's publishing. Ketami Perush Hatvilot LeRabbeinu Maimon Avi HaRambam. This is what he's publishing, is a piece of the commentary on the prayers by Rabbi Maimon, the father of Maimonides. Keta ze matzati b'sefer Kaf Achat Ktav Yad MiRibi Yehuda Bar Meir Toledano. I found this piece in the sefer called Kaf Achat, which is a manuscript that wasn't published, of Rabbi Judah ben Meir Toledano, who was a rabbi in Morocco in the early 19th century, late 18th, early 19th century. And this document was itself quoting another manuscript, Shehetik Miktav Yad Rabbi David Sibuni Meir Sali, another Moroccan rabbi. He's quoting in this book, in this manuscript of Kaf Achat. Perush Hatifilot Chibru Rabbeinu Maimon Balashon Aravi. It's Rabbi, if you're following the recension history here, in a 19th century manuscript, copies another earlier manuscript, an 18th century manuscript of David Siboni, another Moroccan rabbi, which is translating from the Arabic a Perush, a commentary on the prayers by Maimon, the father of Maimonides, of the Rambam. And then he tells you as an aside, V'nizkar, that this book of the Rambam, I think that's what he's referring to, is referred to B'Sheilot U'Tshuvot HaTashbats, Chelik Aleph, and somewhere it's referred to. Even and despite this, Ramshash, and I think what he means here is Moshe Steinschneider. That's Moritz Steinschneider, the bibliophile, the scholar of Hebrew literature from Germany around the turn of the 20th century, late 19th century. He counts this book, this Perush of Maimon, as something that was lost from the earth. Achen, od ad hame'ah hayudchet nizkar shemo be'ezeh ketav yad b'Morocco. But Toledano is saying that this Perush of Maimon was known in various works in Morocco. And you can look at an article in Tarbitz about it. L'fnei Yudchet Shana, and 18 years ago, so he's writing in the 1950s. L'fnei Yudchet Shana, Matzati Ba'ir Sifru, in Morocco, B'Sifriyat HaMishpacha El Baz, Perush al Tefilot B'Lashon Aravi, Katuv al Klaf B'Me'ah Yudbet Be'erech. He found, this is Yaakov Moshe Toledano speaking, he found 18 years ago in the city of Sifru in Morocco, in the library of the Elbaz family, which is a famous Moroccan rabbinic family, the Perush, the commentary of on the Tefillot in Arabic, written in manuscript on parchment, with the style of writing from the 12th century. It's missing the front and end, so there's no colophon. He doesn't know what the title is. He doesn't know who wrote it. Ubo Kume'ad Dapim has about 100 pages. V'shiarti shezehu haperush shel Rabbeinu Maimon. And I assume that this is the Perush of Maimon, the father of Rambam, that he saw in this city in Morocco, in this library of the family of Elbaz. But unfortunately, Lo yacholti az levarer et hasharti zo. I'm not able to confirm my suspicions. Ubeinehem nodali. In the meantime, I found out, it became known to me, shekana haktav yad hamanoach Dr. Ben Sion Ariel Zal, that somebody named Dr. Ben Sion Ariel purchased this manuscript below Eda Efonish Arcade. I don't know where it is anymore nowadays. So this is very just, it's tantalizing that there is some manuscript from the 12th century that is purported to be written by the father of Maimonides that was seen by Yaakov Toledano and was purchased by a man named Ariel Ben Sion, and is lost. So this is interesting story without even knowing what he's going to quote from this is. Just a little interesting bibliographic mystery. Maybe one day we can figure out what happened to that manuscript. By the way, this is Yaakov Moshe Toledano. This is Ariel Ben Sion, who was a scholar of the Kabbalah, of the Zohar, and died at a pretty young age in the 1930s. Okay, so let's see what this keta is. Let's see what this little piece of Maimon's commentary is, and that's on the next slide. And this is the quote that Yaakov Toledano has. It's pretty famous. You can see this all over the place, but it was only famous because Yaakov Toledano made it, published it in the 1950s. Ein lahakel b'shum minhag. You can't treat lightly any custom. Va'afilu minhag kal, even a light custom. V'yitchayev kol nachon lo la'asot mishteh v'simcha u'machal lefarsem hanes she'asa Hashem yitbarach imanu b'otam hayamim. And you have to, follow these customs, even though the ones that are saying, you got to make a festive meal and eat certain things to publicize the miracle that happened long ago. Upashat haminhag la'asot suf ginin be'aravi achsving behem hatzapichiyot bedvash ubetargum iskartin. So this is telling this Perush is telling us that there is a custom to eat something called sufganin, also known as sving in Arabic, and these are what's called the tzapichit, which is a word that is used once in the Torah for the man. We usually translate it as wafers, and it has a targum in Aramaic, iskaritin. I don't exactly, some kind of doughy thing. And this is an early reference to this kind of baked doughy thing. In fact, he gives you the Arabic word, which is sfing, or achsfing, he calls it, which is something that is known even to this day. I don't speak Arabic. I think it's pronounced sfinge, which is a Moroccan donut, Moroccan fried food. It's like a funnel cake or something like that. And I found this picture here. This is a delicacy being served in a hotel in Dubai, Moroccan sfinge. Looks a lot like there's other ones you could find, but nothing to do with Judaism, nothing to do with Hanukkah. There's a Moroccan delicacy called sfinge, and this is evidence, if it's to be believed, that it comes from Maimon in the 11th century, 12th century, that they were eating this kind of food already back, in the medieval period for Hanukkah. All of these, I guess he's referring to like nationalistic customs are like this. The harosh berosh Hashanah, eating the head of the rosh keves or whatever, rosh of the fish on Rosh Hashanah. Chalav b'Purim, we don't have that custom, but to eat dairy on Purim with Motzei Pesach and on the end of Pesach, I guess that's like a Maimuna. V'haful b'Yom Hoshana Rabbah, and to eat beans on Hoshana Rabbah. This is not a custom that I am aware of, but these were customs that he refers to. V'otam min hagot ein lanu levazotam u'mi shehanhigam zariz u'mishtadel hu ki hem me'ikarim na'asim v'lo yavozu b'minhag ha'umah. you can't stray, you can't denigrate these national customs, like, even though they're just all these foods. And so these different foods to eat on different holidays. Alti toshtrati mecha, he says, balot hagaonim rashi shivot nizkaru minhagim kemo ele behanhagotehem ubesifreihem v'lo yitbazeh davar mimasha asu hakadonim. Adkan. So this is a piece. It was really found by Toledano in an 18th century manuscript, quoting a 17th century manuscript, which claims to have been translated from the Arabic from Maimon, from all the way back in the 12th century. That would be the origin, way older than you think, for sufganiyot, including this word sufganin, which is a Talmudic word, and it has to do with spongy dough thing, spongy dough cake, or as we say, donuts. In Spain, a little bit later period, and throughout the Spanish diaspora, of the Sephardic diaspora, there is a Hanukkah food, which is pretty well known, which is not called sufganin or sufganiyot, but rather bulimos or bonlimos, or there's different ways of saying it, but this is a round doughy thing, also like a funnel cake, essentially like a donut. And the interesting thing here is that in Ladino, this word is used. This is a Spanish word, Ladino word, bin bolio, which is being used to translate the same word, tzapichit, which is that doughy cake that was used for the man, the word that was used to translate the word for the man in Hebrew, which is also used here for this sphinge, the Arabic sphinge. So the only thing I want to point out here are two things, really. One, the custom of sufganiyot may be much older than you think, maybe really go all the way back to medieval, North Africa or Spain. And that there's this interesting recension history of Maimonides, of works written by Maimonides' father, Diana in Spain in the 12th century. But it's tantalizingly close, but we don't actually have the Ketav Yad that maybe has been seen sometime in the early 20th century and seems to be missing nowadays. I called a friend of my family, Dr. Arnold Franklin, who is an expert of medieval, the Maghreb, Arabic Jews, and from the Western, from North Africa and that whole period. And I said, is it possible that this sphinge is, being referred to in the 12th century? And he said, it is possible that it is certainly a food that was known in the medieval period. This kind of donut or fried dough was known at that time. Whether it was connected to Hanukkah, couldn't say. And anyone's guess as to the legitimacy of the claim that there was a Ketav Yad in the hand of Maimon ben Yosef from the 12th century. So who knows? But it is possible, and so that's what I leave you with: the possibility that sufganiyot go all the way back to medieval times. Who knows? And if so, Rambam's father says it's a mitzvah that you can't change the custom and you have to eat it. I saw a meme on the internet going around recently that it's eating sufganiyot is not you don't have to eat 2 sufganiyot every day during Hanukkah. But this source maybe indicates maybe you do, maybe you have to. Can't change the custom. And that brings us to our final custom, culinary custom, which is waffles. Waffles is not a widespread custom, but the Dutch Jews, in particular Spanish and Portuguese Jews from Holland, had the custom to eat waffles on Hanukkah. And there is a song called Ahava B'Tanugim, which has several stanzas about the different holidays and the different foods that they eat on the different holidays. And it's an interesting little story. It's not a major incident, major part of halacha, but it's a little cultural history and musical history. So this quote here is coming from Bram Cardozo's Selected Sephardic Songs, or Chants. I forgot the title of his book. But when he gives you this song, Ahava B'Ta'anugim, says this song was composed by Moshe Yehuda Pisa of Amsterdam, who lived at the end of the 18th century, early 19th century. It was written in honor of the yearly anniversary of a society devoted to the study of Hebrew literature. This was a Chevrat Limud Tanakh. They read Tanakh every year, or parts of it, or the whole Tanakh. And every year they had gatherings on various holidays when they would have a big feast and eat special holiday-related foods. And this rabbi, Moshe Yehuda Pisa, wrote a song for these gatherings in which they played with the language and mentioned all the different foods that were being eaten at the different holidays. And so this is what I want to play for you. Rabbi Rode has a great recording where he has some instrumentation added to it. So we're going to listen to that in a minute. But there is some things that you should be aware of just to appreciate it. And Bram Cardozo writes about it here. He says, what does he say? He says, there's an additional literary refinement which makes the song a linguistic delicacy. To cite one example, the fifth stanza brings us to the heart of the Dutch winter, the December days to which Hanukkah brings light. And here's the quote in translation in English: iron to iron, brothers together, between them they bake. On the days of Matityahu, Waffles. At night have no fear, or Waffles, and wonder during these nights have no fear. Street vendors are yelling, hot, get them hot. In squares you bake them. Just let them taste it, just let them taste it. So it's a little hard in the translation to get the feel of it, but we're going to listen to it and you're going to hear the Hebrew where you have this pun, where you have Nes Waffles, which is talking about the miracle of Hanukkah, the wonder of the miracle of Hanukkah, and the word Waffle, Fele. So here we'll take a listen to Rabbi Rode's version.
קדמוני מנהג בינינו להזמין אוכל אות לרגלים, לקרוא נקדש נפשנו כל יום טוב על שולחן עולים. סיסונה כל מגעי, סיסונה כל מגעי, יחד רגעי. ברזל עם ברזל אחים יחד עופים בהם בימי מתתיה, ופתלה בלילות אין פחד, קוראים חמים הם בקריה. ריבועים תופהו, ריבועים תופהו, התגימהו ולכל אחד בישיבתנו ירבה עליון את שמחתו, גם לנלווים אל חברתנו ישלים חפצו ותשוקתו. הצלחות לא יזמן, הצלחות לא יזמן. אמן, 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 amen, amen.
I hope you enjoyed that. It's a little song about the different holidays, and the one we only heard the first and last stanza, which don't refer to the foods in particular, and then the one about Hanukkah, about the Waffles, and it's really cute. So that is the custom here, and Rabbi Rode never fails to sing this song over Hanukkah. And we often have parties for kids or adults where we serve waffles, and happy to share this custom with you. If you'd like to have waffles on Hanukkah, you can add it to your list with latkes and sufganiyot and Iraqi funnel cake, as Annette sent me earlier today, and other culinary customs, which, as we've learned, are important to maintain. And that's my whole spiel for you tonight. One word of administrative change. Next week, we will not meet. And then beginning in January of the new year, we're going to meet every other week, not every week. Every other Wednesday we'll meet. Give me a little more time to assemble these week to week. So hopefully I'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. I wish you Hanukkah Sameach and happy holidays, happy secular holidays. Hope you're having some vacation time at this season. So I'm going to stop the recording and